Today, the Data Science Incubator continues this series about Git from the terminal. We are talking through this lesson of Code Refinery that is entitled Introduction to Version Control with Git. In the issue associated to this meetup, now issue 62, you will find links to the Google Doc that we are using, and that Google Doc also summarizes everything that we've been doing. The first meetup, we kind of understood how Git works and the different places where Git, has stuff, in a staging area, in an index, or in your working tree. And then we started, first configuring Git with Git Config. We added our username, we added our email. Then we started working actually with Git. We used Git status to understand, what is the status of our Git repository, if there is any new file that needs to be added to Git. We learned a few things, how to add files to the staging area, and then how to commit files to the actual index, which is the Git repository. We learned a little bit about how to look at the history of our Git repository with Git log one line, and to have different views of that log. Then we use Git diff to understand what has changed in our Git repository. Git diff has different modes, and we learned about that in a previous meetup. We use Git diff so far in just one mode, in the mode where it just shows you the difference between the index, so that is the stuff that is already recorded in your Git repository, compared to your staging area. But then Git diff takes a few more arguments, if they are optional, and can show you different aspects of the difference between your Git repository. So let's go back to the lesson, to the point where we left last time. We are working with the basics, and I'm going to scroll down all the way to where we left last time. It is here. So Git here, comparing and showing commits. So here we are in our repository. If you remember, we had added a couple of files, one called instructions and another one called ingredients. And the whole idea is that we are creating a recipe to do guacamole. And I believe that my working tree and my staging area and Git repo are kind of all in sync. So I expect that if I do Git status, let's see what's going on here. Probably I haven't refreshed my browser for a while, so sorry for that. Let's wait a little bit. So in the meantime, from previous meetups, do we have any question that you would like to kind of bring up today? Nothing? Okay, so let's do Git status to see what my status is. So as you can see, it says, actually, I am in the branch new. I was playing with this before, and I created a new branch, but we are not yet on the stage where we do branches. So let's do a Git checkout master. Oops, master. There you go. So if I do Git status now, I should get that I am on the master branch. We're going to be talking about branches later, but for now we just go through the lesson as it proposes. And as you can see, it says that there is nothing to commit. Everything is kind of up to date. So before we used, the command that we use and that we're going to be using right now is Git diff. And I show you with the help flag that Git diff has a number of formats or different forms. So the form that we used last time is this one, by which we use Git diff with kind of nothing else. And in that mode, what you get is, in the case that say that you create a new file. So I'm going to create a new file with the command touch. I'm going to create that new file called, say, new file.txt. So that created a new file. You can see it already here on my Git pane. But I can also get it with Git status. So that file, if I do git diff now, I should get nothing because that file isn't yet being tracked by Git. But if I added it to the repository, then git diff could give me the changes to that file. So maybe that's not a very good example. So let's remove that file from here. Actually, I'm going to remove it with remove new file from the terminal, because we are also getting familiar with the terminal. So maybe a better example would be to touch instructions.txt, which is a file that Git is already tracking. So if I say I do echo, I add a new line at the end of the file, say instructions.txt. If I do git diff now with no other argument, what I get is the difference between the state of that file right now on my working tree as it is in my folder, and the state of that file as Git knows, which is the state in this place that Git has that's called the index. So as you can see, I can see in green the new line that I added. But let's remove what I just did with git checkout. What I'm going to do is retrieve the state of that file as it was in the index. So if I now do git status, there is nothing that has changed, because the state that it is showing is the same state as it is recorded in the index. So with what I did right now, I just wanted to show you that Git, to do what I did before, that git diff with no flag gives you just the difference between the index and your working tree. But you can also use git diff with other forms. So let's explore that again on the help file. And the form that we're going to be exploring now is this form here, by which you use git diff to compare two different points in the history of your Git repository. So it can take two commits, so the sha, which is that identifier of commits, of two different commits, and can give you the difference between those 2 points in the history. So let's use git diff in that mode. One nice thing to do would be to first have a look at the log. Maybe let's do one line to see the log in a more compact way. So say that I want to see the log between this state and this state, right? Maybe in order for me to know which states I want to compare. So let's say I want to compare this state. I'm going to copy this and paste it here, and this other state here, right? So in that case, I can use this form, git diff sha1 and sha2, to compare those 2 points in the history. So let's do that. Git diff, actually I can use it. I didn't need to actually have this record here, because I can do not save. I can just look it for later. So git diff, say I want to compare this commit here, right? Let's paste it there. I'm going to paste it with shift inst, because in terminal that's sometimes what you need to do depending on what terminal you are, and this other commit. So this is a new form that we haven't seen before. So in that case, Git is showing me the difference between those 2 points in the history. And when we start looking at, so how do we read this? So in this case, it is showing us that some lines have been removed. They are highlighted in red, and they have a minus symbol there. And that's all it happened in that change. In particular, what's more readable and more useful is this particular line of the file ingredients, and the other files are kind of a bit more weird. One thing I want to also show is that git diff can take not only that, but can also take a specific path. So we could get just the diff to this particular file only if we use the same form that we used before, but now we give the name of the path that we want to explore only. So let's say that we want to explore ingredients.txt only, and let me clear this up with Ctrl-L. So if I wanted to explore the diff between those 2 points in the history, but specifically for that particular file, I could just give the path after this minus separator. So with that, I get a cleaner diff. and specifically for that file. And that is great because it allows you to follow a particular file through the history of your repository. So with that, we cover this item here. So now let's move on to to playing with the file system in our repository, but not just as we would normally do. Say if I wanted to remove one file, I would usually just click the file here in RStudio and maybe go here to delete and remove it from there, or you could remove it directly from the terminal with the command remove. But instead, we are going to do it in a wiser way. We are going to use the power of Git to remove files and to move them and to rename them and do everything that we could do directly with the tools that we have to interact with our file system. But now we are going to use it through Git. That way, every change that we do to our file system is recorded by Git and is going to display very nicely on the history of Git. And it's going to be totally reversible, right? So let me clear this up with Ctrl-L once again, and let's have a look at what the lesson proposes. So it is proposing us to create a new file, which we can do in many ways, but let's say that I'm gonna use this time RStudio. So I'm gonna click here on File. Let's say that it is a text file, and I'm going to call it, let's type something here, hello. And let's save it. I'm gonna save it as new file.txt, save. And here it is. You can also see it in the Git pane. If I expand this a little bit, in the Git pane, you see that it is already recorded as something that has been added to the working tree, but Git is still not tracking it. So that's the next step. So the next step is to add that file and then commit that file. So let's do just that. So in RStudio, what you could do is to click here to add the file to the staging area. But from the terminal, you could do, or you now know how to do it from the terminal with git add. In this case, we could say git add and the name of the file, like new file.txt. Or you could also use, if there is many files and you want to add them all, you could use something like dot, which will add everything. However, it is best practice, of course, to be specific and add the specific file that you want. So with git add, now when I run that, you can see that now the git status shows that that file has already been added to the staging area. Why is that not reflected here on the Git pane? Simply because I haven't refreshed the Git pane, but there it is. It is the same effect of having checked that box there. And now we are going to commit that file. That's this last part of the instruction in point 1. So let's do that. Git commit, and remember we need a flag, -m to give a message. And here is, we write something like add new file.txt, and that will add the message and the commit. And there we go. So if I do git status now, git status now, there is nothing else to commit. Let's do it again to show you clearly what that is. And the git log, let's do one line, should also show our last commit here, right? Then what we're gonna do is we're gonna rename that file, but using the terminal. So what you could do in RStudio, for example, if you come here and then you go to the rename, and you could change the name from there. That's one way, right? But if we want the change to be kind of very neatly tracked by Git, one good way to do that would be with the command Git Mv, which is for move, right? So with that, you can create a new commit to move that file from, say, new file to renamed new file.txt. So with that command, what I get here is a sign that RStudio is telling me that the file that I had opened no longer exists, and it's true because it no longer is called a new file, now it's called renamed new file. If I do a git status, you will see that Git already knows that what I did is an operation, a renaming operation, and I should see, let's see here on the master branch what I get. Okay, if I refresh, RStudio also exposes that operation as a rename. That's why we have the icon R here showing that it has been a rename. If I uncheck the box, look what happens. It's interesting. So instead of having one file being renamed, I get it as if it was an operation on two files. The new file .txt as it being removed, and then a new file called rename new file as being added. So when I check, or when I add both to a staging area, now RStudio understand that what it was a renaming operation. So that's just like to correlate or to relate the experience that you had probably from RStudio to the experience that you are now building from terminal. But okay, we haven't yet committed the file. In RStudio, you would commit from here, and you're welcome to do that in your everyday life. But today we are going to create the commit with the terminal. So git commit, commit -m, and here my message is something like rename to renamed new file.txt. Okay, that is my operation, my renaming operation. If I do a git status, it is now clean. Let me actually clear the console, and here I'll show you again that I am on a clean status. And let's continue with the instructions. So we are now going to run git log one line and git status to explore a little bit what we've done. So git log one line, what would you expect to see? Git log, there is git log. Let's do it now. Git log one line. I think I mistyped the command before. Let's run it again. Git log one line. It should show the renaming operation over here. And if I do a git log, just git log, it should also show something very similar, except that in an expanded form, which is something that we have been seeing in the previous meetups. Now let's remove the file. So the operation that we have just seen is the operation by which we move the file. Basically, we rename the file with the command move, which moves the file from one name to the other. Now we are going to completely remove it. So if we wanted to do that, let me clear this with Ctrl-L. We could do something like git. Let me refresh this because it kind of bothers me that it's kind of out of date. So there we go. So if we wanted to remove this file, what we could do is git remove, rm for remove, and the name of the file. Remember, I'm going to use the tab completion to save typing. Rename. I type a few keystrokes, and then I press tab, and I get the full name of the file. So I'm going to remove that file. And as you can see, now it appears on the Git pane on RStudio as deleted. But again, think this is on the staging area. It hasn't yet been committed. So if I do a git status, you would expect it to appear on the staging area as a deleted file, right? So we do now the git commit with a message like delete renamed new file.txt. And now my git status should be clean again. One interesting way, or one interesting flag to the git log is the flag stat, because that flag shows us changes in different files. So if I do the, just to review a little bit about log, remember a git log gives you a long form, but you can do it shorter with git log -s. Oh, sorry. Git log, or maybe I'm forgetting something here. Because let's see, git log -s. No, that's the short form. Sorry, stat. Git log stat will give you this information that wasn't available before. Renamed new file.txt has been, one line has been removed and the file has changed. So I like the form with also with the one line. So if you combine the flag one line and the flag stat, you get for every commit specifically the files that have changed in each commit. And if those changes have been an addition or it have been like a subtraction, right? So let me share with you what I believe is the ultimate Git log. It is saved also here in the Google Doc that we are using. It is this command here. So if I do the git log one line, it looks good. It looks pretty good. But I could do a little better with decorate, because that will give me the name of the different branches that I have, and it will show me to which commits those branches are pointing to. And notice that there is always where we are right now at the commit that we are checked out right now. You also always have this this keyword called head. So in this case, head and master are pointing to the same place, right? But I could move the head to a different point in the history of the commits. And we'll do that in other meetups. The flag graph is also cool, but it won't show any difference right now. It will start paying off when we have merge commits. Merge commits are when two branches of the same history of the repository are kind of merged at some point. And then when that starts happening, you start kind of benefiting from having a visual way of understanding the history of the repository. So far, the history is linear. So if I use the flag graph, I won't get anything different. But if I had here a merge commit, you will see that you will see those branches moving off the left hand side of the screen. But this is a bit abstract for now. So for now, the ultimate Git log includes all these flags, and I put it here for your reference because you may want to start using it in your own work. One aspect. Let's see. I have to decide if we continue with the lesson or address a couple of comments that. Maybe I think I'm going to address a comment that comes from Alex last time. So last time I showed you that if I want to create a commit on RStudio as I have it here on RStudio Cloud, because RStudio Cloud only has one text editor, and that text editor is called Vim, the interface that we get to edit text is very awkward. And Alex pointed that maybe I should mention that from your own terminal, you can configure a different text editor. So that's what I'm going to show you now. So I'm going to pop up a new terminal. And before I do that, I'm going to show you what's the problem that we are trying to solve. So say that I have a new file, couch, the file A. And I want to add that file to the staging area. I show you the status. Here it is, and I want to create a commit. If I do git commit and I don't use the flag -m, remember from last time, you are dropped in this text editor that is called Vim. That is the only text editor that is available in RStudio Cloud. And if I wanted to, install a different editor, I couldn't, because on RStudio Cloud I have no privileges to do that. But in your own work, you could use any other text editor that you want. So let me show you what that could look like. So let's jump to my desktop here. Here my desktop is empty, but let's create a new Git repository with git init demo. And now let's move into demo. Git status shows that there is nothing to commit, there is no commit yet. And let's do something similar to what I did before. Let's touch a file called A. Let's add that file to the staging area. So if I do now a git status, you would see there. And let's now create a commit. Before I do that, I could configure using Git Config a text editor. Like for example, in this case, I'm gonna configure that text editor locally. But you could also do it globally with this flag global. So I'm gonna do it local, and I'm gonna say core.editor. I'm gonna say nano. Nano is just one program that is a text editor, very basic, very simple, but much nicer interface than Vim. So if I now do, let's go back to the status. So I have this file A and I want to create a commit. If I now do git commit and I forget to use the flag -m, I'm gonna be dropped into this nano interface. As you can see, this program is nano. It is not the Vim program that you saw before. And it's a little more helpful in that it gives me already some of the commands that I may want to type. For example, I want to create a commit message. So I'm gonna say add new file A. And now I want to close this file. How do I do it? Well, at least I have an indication here. If I want to exit, I press Control. So that little hat means Control and then X. So I'm gonna do that, Control X, and then I get a question and asks me, would you like to modify this file? Basically, it is asking me in a weird way if I want to save this file. And by saying yes, and I say yes with the Y, so I'm pressing Shift Y to do the capital Y, and then Enter, I actually save that file and effectively save the commit. So if I do a git log now, you can see that I have effectively done that commit. So that was to address the very useful comment by Alex, because in your day-to-day life, most likely, some people use Vim, but it's not the most user-friendly text editor. So I do recommend you to configure whatever text editor that you are more familiar with. And if you don't have anyone, I recommend maybe Nano, because it's a simple one. Otherwise, you can just use the interface to create commits from RStudio, right? You just click commit and you just type a message right here, like add new file. So those things are just to avoid the ugly interface that you get with Vim. And Vim is a very powerful program, but it has a very steep learning curve. So maybe it's not now the time to learn about it. Okay, so with that, we finish this meetup. We have a few seconds to see if we have any questions. So I open the floor for questions or comments.
Maybe just one question. What is your favorite text editor that you would use? Like, do you use Nano, or is it like too simplistic at some point and you personally use something else?
So I use very heavily RStudio and Vim, and the reason is personal. So I prefer, Vim, as I demonstrated in RStudio Cloud, sometimes it is the only option. So if you are working with a server or you're working with RStudio Cloud, you are just unable to install software on those computers that you don't have administrative privileges on. So I force myself to use Vim because I want to be moderately fluent with it. But in most cases, if you are not an admin of computer of servers or anything like that, most likely you don't need Vim. It's just kind of fun to play with and learn something new, but it's certainly not crucial, and most people do configure Nano or any other kind of nicer program. When I was using Windows, I used to configure the normal Notepad. So Notepad is a program that you can also set as your core editor. Okay, with that, we need to finish now. Do we have any other questions before we say bye? Okay, it looks like that's all for today. Okay, see you then next time. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.